Hello and welcome to Table for One. David Jernigan. It's Jernigan, yes?
Yes.
I should have asked beforehand.
Yes.
I got it right. Awesome for me. We're so happy to see you. Thank you for being here. You picked a fantastic film, the first Coen Brothers film ever, 1984's Blood Simple. Will you please describe it for us?
Yes, I'll give a kind of brief description. So, a bar owner in Texas, and it's kind of a seedy neon light bar, finds out his wife is cheating on him with one of his employees, and so he enlists the services of a private investigator to do something about it. And and so there's some discussion about how exactly he's going to resolve this. There's a conversation between Marty, the bar owner, and the private investigator, and they kind of decide that the couple need to be wiped off, just wiped out, the wife and the guy she's running around with. And so it's sort of it's almost like a dark comedy. It's a mystery. I've read it's an homage to film noir. So it's a drama. There is some dark humor in it, and that's basically the plot. So the plot is what happens when these people start interacting with each other, and the private investigator goes to look for the couple and what he decides to do and how he does it and how things go wrong and how people keep misunderstanding, miscommunicating. There's mistaken identities. And so the whole thing just kind of spirals from there.
Now, of all the movies in all the world, why did you pick this one to discuss with us?
A couple of reasons, and I wouldn't say it's my favorite movie. I'd say I like it a lot. If I had to list my favorite movies, it may not be number one. But when I first saw this movie in 2011, I was so blown away by it. And I've seen other Coen Brothers movies, but this one I didn't see until after I'd seen some of those. And when I saw it, I thought, oh, I just want to talk to somebody about this movie who's seen it and just ask them what they think of it. So I texted a couple of people. I couldn't find anybody who had seen it. And then when this opportunity came up and I was trying to think of movies to talk to you about, I wanted to pick a movie that I hadn't heard you review already. So I didn't know what you thought of it, but one I thought you might like, and one that maybe you don't get asked a lot about. So it would be more interesting for you maybe to talk about it than maybe the same movie that you've already reviewed 10 times with other people. And so it just occurred to me, oh, Blood Simple. That's a good one to talk to them about. That's how I picked it.
Well, and for you, it's perfect because you're in Texas. It's so perfect that you chose this one for so many reasons. So then, Alonzo, had you seen Blood Simple prior to this?
Yeah, I saw it when I was in college, probably in like 1985 when it was first coming out. I remember it was, Sundance was happening at this point, but like it didn't become a thing that I think most people knew about until probably, I would say roughly 1989 when the big deal went through for Sex, Lies, and Videotape. That really kind of put that on the map. But this was a movie that like Siskel and Ebert were raving about, that was getting, the kind of art house release and the kind of gushing reviews where I was like, okay, I got to go see this. But I had not revisited it since then. So this was a really cool opportunity. I did find out in doing the research on this that its first big screening before it played at Sundance was at the USA Film Festival in Dallas, which I was a programmer of in the 90s. So that was exciting to see that bit of shared history. But I remember at the time thinking, this is really exciting. These guys really know what they're doing. And so to find out now, of course, that it launched not only the Coens, but Frances McDormand and Barry
Sonnenfeld.
Barry Sonnenfeld, thank you. And really kind of put these guys on the map. It's you see this movie being a real kind of turning point for so much of American indie cinema and so much, not just launching those careers, but I think certainly through the rest of the 80s and into the 90s, you saw a lot of movies trying to emulate these sort of noir flavored, cheating lovers and a gun and, sort of formula here. But like these guys are really doing something special with it, I think. What about you, Christy?
So I had never seen it. I'm embarrassed to say, given I love the Coens so much. And I thought I had seen it. When you picked Blood Simple, I'm like, oh, cool, I've seen that. But I hadn't. I had seen Miller's Crossing. Also early Coen's noir. So I was really pleased to have the opportunity to see this. And it's fascinating in retrospect to go back and watch them plant the seeds here for so many of the characters that they would create over the last 4 decades, so many of the kinds of stories that they want to tell, because these are really ordinary people. These are ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances because of misunderstandings and stupid fate. And, you know, they're just bumbling their way through their schemes, and no one is as smart or as clever as they think they are. And so you'll see that again with like William H. Macy in Fargo.
Exactly.
You'll see that with Michael Stuhlbarg in A Serious Man. You'll see that with Oscar Isaac in Inside Llewyn Davis, which is a movie that I absolutely love. Even The Dude, to some extent, like he's in a noir, bumbling his way through. It's just played more for comedy there.
Raising Arizona, which was their next movie, they're kind of bumbling through this whole
Nicolas
thing.
Cage is bumbling his way through a crime completely. And also it's cool to see just from a technical perspective, the camera work here when Barry Sonnenfeld was still their DP back then is so similar to what you would see in Raising Arizona, which is a much more famous film. Like a lot of the low angles, following the feet, which is also kind of a Hitchcock thing. But like there's a shot outside of Ray's house with Frances McDormand where he like pushes like up and in, and it's like something that you would see in Raising Arizona, and they don't shoot their films that way anymore, and they haven't for a very long time. But it was kind of cool just to see like, oh, it was all there in the most rudimentary form. Also, the use of language and the way the Coens like to repeat certain phrases. And so like even in the beginning, you have Ray in the car saying, well, I'm not a marriage counselor. We had the line that comes back with Frances McDormand saying, you know, I ain't doing anything funny. You know, that's it's so them. And you'll see that in Lebowski, especially. Yeah, Josh Brolin in No Country for Old Men is not the smartest guy. He just finds the bag of money and gets in too deep. So it's kind of cool to see, like, I wonder what it is about that kind of character that fascinates them.
Yeah, I was telling my wife,
You know.
because she saw this.
David, what?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Please.
I was going to say, I was telling my wife about this movie because I had to convince her to watch it with me. And I said, you're going to want to watch it before you watch the review that we do about it. And I said, the way I see this movie is that regular people aren't really good at planning and executing murders, by and large.
If you learn one thing from the Coens.
Don't try this at home.
Yeah, there's definitely this. The notion of like, you know, the guy trying to like clean up the body and stuff, and it's just like there's just so much blood everywhere, and like you get it onto your jacket, and then you have to clean the jacket, and then you leave it on the sink, and it's just like, yeah, it is one thing after another. Weirdly enough, I think this is kind of almost a feminist noir in that the noir film is sort of famous for the femme fatale. And, you know, it's usually the woman who like drives the plot and sets off this, you know, chain of events that dooms, you know, the hero. And here, the woman hasn't really done anything except for like leave her husband. And everything else stems from people either wanting to possess her or not trusting her or not believing her. And then she's the last one left standing because she's really the innocent in all this, relatively speaking, which I thought was a kind of an interesting, you know, approach to it that I hadn't thought about before.
She's very resourceful, isn't she? Like nothing about her tells us that she would know how to handle herself when someone's coming after her with a gun. But she like knows to scamper over to the wall and like throw her shoe at the light. You know?
Yep.
Like she's a survivor, you know. And how cute is young Frances McDormand?
Very precious.
You know, I mean, yes, but I think at the same time though, like she isn't the kind of, you understand that she is married to the director, you know, like that she's not the.
But she wasn't then.
Oh, really? Oh, well, still,
no,
okay.
This is where they met, right?
Yes,
but
that's
he
what
was
I saw,
24.
yeah.
This is like her first film.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
See?
he's smitten with her. I mean, she's beautiful, but I think she's not beautiful in the way that traditional filmmakers would have cast her in this role. You know, but the camera absolutely, you know, loves what she's got, and she is allowed to be this really, like you said, resourceful character. And I think the stuff with the push-ins and stuff, like when Sonnenfeld started doing that first for the Coens and then for himself and like the Addams Family and stuff, like it became such a distinctive thing that like they couldn't keep doing it because it sort of went out into the ether and became just part of filmmaking language, and it would be too repetitive if they had stayed on it. So I could see where like it works here. It works, Raising Arizona is almost like the comedy version of that so often. In fact, I remember a critic at the time saying even the camera angles are funny about Raising Arizona. But I see why they couldn't like stick with it, or else I think, they'd sort of be accused of kind of repeating themselves. I'm curious, David, how in 2011 did you come upon this movie? Was it just you knew you liked the Coens and you wanted to go back and see it, or was it presented in some way that,
I think I probably read something about the Coens because I'd seen some of their movies by then, and I saw mentioned maybe in a magazine or somewhere something about Blood Simple, maybe in reference to something not even related to the Coens, but I saw, okay, Coen's Blood Simple, their first film. I thought, well, I need to check this out and see what it's about.
Did you notice, I noticed this, that M. Emmett Walsh drives a Volkswagen Bug, and that's the same kind of car that the detective following Lebowski is driving, following him around in L.A.?
It's been so long since I've seen the Big Lebowski.
I like that they make the Bug this sort of foreboding thing where, like, when it pulls up, behind them or outside the house, it's like, oh shit, it's you don't expect the scary murderer to be driving a Beetle, and so that's kind of a fun thing where, like, the character imbues it with so much malice that this otherwise sort of innocuous or even like, unmanly car suddenly has this power to it when it comes pulling into the frame.
And I love the fact that the thing. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I think speaks to something I liked about this movie, which is there's this undercurrent of dread and menace that runs through it, but it's kind of leavened by the incompetence of these people and the unexpected places where it's funny. And like you said, the Bug following them, you think of Herbie the Love Bug. Herbie the Love Bug would have never stalked anybody.
No. Heavens no.
But that speaks to what I was going to say, which is like the fact that the cigarette lighter is hiding beneath the fish that he had to go to Corpus to catch so that he had an alibi. Like, everything about that is so stupid. Like, no one looks underneath the fish. It's so dumb.
Yeah, I know exactly. Like, he's sure that one of them has the lighter on them, and they don't even know who he is or what he's talking about, But yeah, it's like, they would give us like Anton Chigurh, like these characters who are just like evil and, like diabolical in this way. And here it's just these petty little jerks and their little machinations, and they don't have any grand scheme at play. And, he's, the Marty's going to cover for the money being gone by saying that, someone must have stolen it from the safe, and Emmett Walsh is just like, sets this whole thing in motion just to steal the money without ever having to actually like kill them, but he's happy to kill Marty. Like, it's no one is thinking this through. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
But I love that at this point, like, the Coens have such an eye for detail that like there were some really cool transitions here. There's some fantastic camera work, which I think is partly the influence of Sam Raimi, who was their friend back then. So like the whole thing with Emmett Walsh, like pushing through the wall, like reaching through to pull the knife out of his hand, and like the bullet holes. Yeah,
the
with,
light
coming through. It's so like that looks. It's so Sam Raimi. I think like the mixture of fright and humor at the same time is also him. But did you also know that this is the first time that they worked with Carter Burwell on the score, who would then go on to do all his other scores?
Yeah, I was going to mention it. Yeah, it's Burwell's first score for anybody, and already like it's so minimal but so effective.
And I read quotes that he said that he finds that the less music you put in a movie, the better it is. And he says most movies that are just over scored, and he likes to kind of keep it at a minimum. And so I watched the Criterion Collection version of this, which has interviews with a lot of the people involved in the movie, the Coen Brothers, Barry Sonnenfeld, Carter Burwell, Francis McDormand, and M. Emmett Walsh. And of course, all but M. Emmett Walsh, this was their first movie. So everybody, I don't know if you've all seen those interviews, but you have seen those interviews? No.
No.
Well,
I have not.
all the rest
No.
of these folks from the Coens on down, who worked on this movie the first time, they all said the same thing, almost in the same words, which was a version of, "This was my first feature-length movie, and I had no idea what I was doing."
Well, you never know from watching it. There's such precision, like even like the slightest transitions of like the finger pushing down the answering machine button, and that like morphs into the finger going into the blood in the back seat in the car. Like there's so much care with like
the way the dots of blood emerge through the blanket that he throws over the back seat.
The sound of dragging the shovel on the ground in the nighttime. Like there's so much care that went into mood and texture.
Yeah, Walsh was, I mean, such a total veteran at that point. I mean, like he'd made early appearances in like Peter Bogdanovich movies like What's Up, Doc and At Long Last Love. And then Dan Hedaya, his first appearance on Cheers was also in 1984 when Blood Simple started screening. So he was already kind of getting to a place where he was a more recognizable character actor. But yeah, for a lot of these folks, they were total noobs.
Now, David, are you a fan of the Coen Brothers in general?
Yes. I've seen most of their movies, not all of them, but I've liked all the ones I've seen.
What do you like by them best? What's your favorite by them?
I am a big fan of roots music and especially bluegrass. And in fact, I do a radio show from the San Antonio College community radio station, San Antonio Community College radio station. And we have a daily show, 3 hours of roots and Americana music. And I do a shift a month, sometimes more than that. So, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is one of my favorites of theirs. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs I liked a lot, and Inside Llewyn Davis.
I love Inside Llewyn Davis. And the first time I saw it, I liked it. And then I saw it again, and like it got into my bones. Like I just love the mood of it. I love Oscar Isaac in it. And he's yet another Coen's character who just like cannot catch a break. Right?
Yeah, and especially
I'm a Man Who Wasn't There fan.
and for Inside Llewyn Davis, the fact.
Sorry, you were saying David, especially.
And I think there's a little delay between when I speak and when you all hear me, or when I can hear you. But anyway, Inside Llewyn Davis, the fact that it's the early 1960s, I love period movies like that, especially that have good period detail. That was another thing that I liked about that film, especially.
For sure. Yeah. What did you notice in rewatching Blood Simple to come and talk to us? What did you notice this time around that was different? Or did you?
I don't know if I noticed anything different. I remember the first time I watched this movie, and watching it again just reinforced this. My first thought when it ended was Emmett Walsh and Dan Hedaya were perfectly cast. I mean, I thought that their characters were they fit their characters so well. They just did such a great job. So that was just reinforced when I watched it the second time. And I guess I was reminded of the second time of how all these misunderstandings led to all these dumb decisions and how this violence kind of spiraled out of control. And I did remember from the first time that hand on the windowsill and the knife going through it, that's a hard image to forget.
Yeah, it's almost Shakespearean. Like, it's the kind of thing where if various characters just said one sentence to each other. Yeah. Right? But none of this would have happened.
But it's not that thing where Ebert would complain about like 1-2 minute conversation ends this movie, because there's a reason why they're not having that conversation. Like the fact that Ray has had that seed of doubt about Abby planted in his head by Marty, even though he knows that Marty is, a piece of shit. Like everything that he has told her about Abby makes him suspicious. And so, of course, when he finds Marty dead and finds Abby's gun there, he's off to the races. And Abby, again, is having this conversation with him where neither of them is saying the thing, but she doesn't understand what's actually happening. And he just assumes that she's lying or manipulating him. And so, yeah, like that is so brilliantly written, because you put yourself in the heads of both of those characters and you understand exactly why they are or are not saying the things that need to be said in that moment, and how the things that are missing from that conversation are leading both of them in the wrong direction. And that's really hard to pull off, because usually you're just like, oh, come on, but you get it. It's been laid out for you why it's happening that way.
I think I have another answer to your question, Christy, or Alonzo, whichever you asked, what did I notice the second time I didn't notice the first time. And there's that stretch in the middle where Ray takes Marty's body out on the highway to the field and buries him. And there's about 15 or 20 minutes of no dialogue at all. I thought that was very effective.
Oh, yeah. True.
And bold for a first film, right?
Yeah.
Like, you think you'd want to like fill the space with talking, and they were so confident in themselves already to let the images speak for them. That's great. It's amazing. So, David, we do numbers.
So in that stretch, so when you hear that shovel scraping across the road, it's even more. The sound is even more jarring. It's more memorable because it hasn't been accompanied by dialogue. Yeah.
That's a really good observation.
Yeah.
So we do numbers here on Table for One, like we do with a normal review. So from 1 to 10, what would you give Blood Simple, David? 8. Alonzo?
I would probably say like a 9.6. I mean, this is, I think, one of the most, significant directorial debuts. It's not quite Citizen Kane, but it's up there. It is up there, I think, in terms of not just sort of shifting film itself into a new direction and sort of really kind of giving an independent film a new boost, but also sort of lauding the career of these filmmakers who would go on to do, so much substantial stuff.
Yeah, I'll say 9. I'm right in between you guys. I just thought it was so cool to see it. It was all there, all along with Blood Simple. It was a real pleasure talking to you. You have chosen a fantastic film. I loved having the chance to talk to you guys and explore all these themes and characters. So thank you so much.
Thanks, David.
Opportunity.